It was a quiet, chilly evening when Emily moved into the old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The house had been abandoned for years, its wood creaking under the weight of time and neglect. But she didn't mind. In fact, she loved the solitude. The walls had character, the floors had a story, and she was eager to make it her own. The first night, everything was calm. She unpacked her things and settled into her new bedroom, a small, cozy space overlooking the overgrown garden. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. She felt at peace until she heard it. A soft tapping. Like a finger against the wood. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. She listened closely, trying to locate the sound. There it was again, tap, tap, tap. It came from the walls. Emily's pulse quickened. It's just the house settling, she muttered to herself, trying to shake off the unease. She got up, went to the window, and stared into the night. The garden was empty, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. She tried to convince herself that the house was just old. But the tapping, it didn't stop. It only grew louder, as if something inside the walls was trying to reach her. The next morning, she decided to investigate. She tried the attic, but the door was locked. She checked the basement, but it was just a damp, dark space with cobwebs in every corner. She couldn't find any explanation for the noises. As the days passed, the tapping continued. It became more persistent, more urgent, like someone, something, was desperately trying to get out. At night, Emily would lie in bed, wide awake, listening to the rhythmic tapping in the walls. She started to feel as though she was being watched, the air thick with a sense of something lurking just beyond her sight. One evening, after a particularly long day, Emily decided she had enough. She would confront whatever was making the noise. She grabbed a flashlight, her heart pounding in her chest, and made her way to the attic. The door creaked open with a groan, and she stepped inside, scanning the dimly lit room. There, in the corner, she noticed something odd. A small, worn door that she hadn't seen before. It was hidden behind a stack of old crates, and it looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Curiosity gnawed at her, and despite every instinct telling her to turn back, she approached the door. The moment her hand touched the doorknob, a wave of cold swept over her. She hesitated, but then, with a deep breath, she twisted it open. The room beyond was narrow, barely enough for her to stand. The walls were lined with old, faded wallpaper, but what caught her attention were the strange symbols scratched into the wood. Before she could investigate further, she heard a sound, soft, faint at first, but growing louder. The tapping, from inside the walls, was now frantic. It echoed in her ears, and she felt a presence, like something ancient and angry, closing in on her. Terrified, Emily stumbled back, her flashlight slipping from her grip. The door slammed shut with a force that shook the floor beneath her. She spun around, heart racing, but the room felt different. The air was thick, suffocating. She felt trapped, her breathing shallow. Suddenly, the walls began to creak, groan, and shift. The tapping grew louder and louder, now accompanied by a low, guttural whisper. "Let me out." Emily's blood ran cold. The voice came from the walls, a voice she couldn't place. It was old, twisted, filled with agony. She backed away, hands trembling, but no matter where she moved, the whisper followed. She tried to run, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The tapping was deafening now, relentless, as though the very house was alive, hungry for her. "Let me out." The voice was clearer now, closer, almost beside her. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She wanted to scream, but her voice was lost in the noise, swallowed by the very walls themselves. Then, as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The tapping ceased. The whispers vanished. Emily stood frozen, her breath coming in quick gasps, as the silence settled over her like a heavy blanket. The door finally creaked open on its own. Shaken, she stumbled back into the attic, the cold air biting at her skin. but as she stepped toward the stairs, she noticed something strange. The attic door, the one she had just opened, was now gone. The space that had once led her to it was sealed. There was no trace of the door, no hint of what had happened. Only a strange, unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach. The tapping had stopped. But it was not gone. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she thought she saw something move in the shadows. She heard it again, whispers, soft and distant. The tapping, too, had returned, louder than ever before. And somewhere deep within the walls of the farmhouse, something waited.